Hi, everyone. For our latest Astoria Mutual Aid Community Spotlight, I recently followed up with Kim Calichio of Lifeline Groceries. Kim and I discussed the status of food security in the Astoria community and Greater Queens, the current number of those being served by Lifeline Groceries, and the success of families that no longer require food assistance. We talk about the role of partnerships when addressing economic inequality and the transition from relying on volunteers to job creation and sustainability. Finally, we cover the funding needed for delivering Lifeline groceries and how people like yourself can contribute. Kim is a dedicated member of the Astoria community, committed to serving the most vulnerable during challenging times. So if you're like me and inspired by the belief in never settling, and look to support someone that lives this out every day, please stick around and enjoy my latest conversation with Kim Calichio. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
It's
How are you?
I'm good. It's so great to finally get to talk to you again. We spoke last June, and a lot has happened in Queens in the last 2.5 months, and I'm sure a lot has happened with Lifeline Groceries. And
Mhm.
I just wanted to reconnect with you, the connected chef, and just kind of get an update on what's going on. When we had spoken last time, you had mentioned that the goal of Lifeline Groceries is enough food for a family for
Mhm.
a whole week. Um, Food insecurity is I even know things have changed a little bit. What's going on right now with Lifeline Groceries and battling food insecurity, if you will?
Yeah, so it's still an issue. Surprise, surprise. um, our families, if you remember, we specifically serve families who were out of work and didn't qualify for any unemployment or pandemic unemployment assistance or anything. So that is still very much food insecurity is still very much at the forefront of the communities that we're serving right now. Jobs are the types of jobs that folks had were not white collar office jobs where you can work at home typically. They were jobs like restaurant worker. They were, cleaning jobs and really blue collar type work that people were doing that was most affected by the pandemic and by all of the closures around New York City. So while the city is opening back up, a lot of the work that our community had previously is still not open, or to the extent where they're able to make a living like they were previously. So food insecurity is still very much an issue for our families, and families who are on our waiting list and waiting to be served by Lifeline Grocery as well. It's something that I think, if anything, has just to some extent gotten worse and not gotten better, because I think in the beginning everybody was affected within this really short period of time. And now we're moving into this stage of the game where some people have gone back to work, and there's still the most vulnerable of our community who is not back to work, and is really struggling and struggling without any solution in sight. There's not really much that can be done. If you are a restaurant worker or a construction worker and your industry has collapsed, it's kind of hard to figure out a plan B. So people are doing that and they're adjusting, but it takes time. And it's hard when you don't have much other backup support.
Yeah, it's interesting. This morning I was looking at the market, and the market is looking really great, but which is a poor indicator of what communities and what the everyday person is dealing with. And you had mentioned like you have a waiting list now. What kind of numbers are you looking at on a weekly basis with Lifeline?
Right now, we're serving just under 700 families. It's about 657 families, I believe, a week. But we have a waiting list of over 800 people. And we had at one point closed our form because we didn't want to give false hope to folks either. Um, but it's an indicator of exactly how many people are waiting for service. And looking at food pantry lines across Queens, you can see really easily how many people are still waiting on these lines, showing up at 5 o'clock in the morning or even the night before to try to make sure that they get food on a regular basis. So even families like we serve 657 families. There are thousands of families still just in Queens alone who are food insecure and are needing additional support.
And have you seen any I hate to say this, but light at the end of the tunnel for some families, or yeah, yeah, because it can just be. I'm sure when you're when you're on the front lines, like it could just seem overwhelming, and just wondering if how some families have maybe coped and maybe been able to pull through.
Yeah. So it's such interesting work because it's so heavy on both sides, right? It's really daunting and overwhelming and enraging to be able to see the disparity in our communities and the issues that need to be dealt with. But at the same time, when we do good work and we come together as a community, that really does create solution. And we've seen that with Lifeline. We were serving over 700 people. And the reason our numbers dropped is because almost 100 people were able to let us know that they no longer need the groceries anymore. So that's wonderful at the same time. And we do check-ins with our families on a regular basis. So we're able to give them a call one-on-one, ask them how they're doing, how are the groceries like working for them, is it enough food for their family, and are they back to work? And it's been so warming to be able to hear from some families personally that, you know what, we are actually in such a better place right now. And we are so unbelievably grateful for this program and this work, because if it wasn't for that, I don't know how we would have gotten through the last 3 months or the last 4 months. And hearing those words from families is the most, it's hard to explain the feeling that you get when you hear something like that. And it makes a difference. And even if it's for one family, this is something that got them through maybe, one of the hardest times in, at least their recent history, right? So being able to provide that kind of support to somebody within your own community, to the point where they're like, guess what? Like, I found work and I get to buy my own groceries, and now I want to volunteer for you, or now I want to donate so that we can make sure another family has this. That's huge, and that's really what all of this work is about.
And you mentioned community a number of times, and the importance of community, and in this community of Astoria that we call home, you've
Mhm.
been able to use a number of partnerships and a number of volunteers. Are those partnerships and volunteers still just as strong and just as important? Yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and while it's important to remember that we are based in Astoria too, most of the families that we're serving are outside of Astoria, come from neighborhoods in Western Queens, still Corona, Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, but also South Queens as well, Jamaica and Ozone Park also. And I think that the partnerships that we've made here within Astoria are still going strong and have the same mentality of Astoria is has more money overall and has like have more wealth as a community. So then it's our responsibility to make sure that we give that to communities who don't. Because like you mentioned earlier, like the market's doing really great, right? But there's still families who can't eat. And there's that huge gap between those two types of ways of living. And we see that locally too. So it's our responsibility, and the partners that we've created feel it's our duty to make sure we can take what we can and disperse it to those who have the least or don't get the same resources as we might get here in Astoria. So in terms of partnerships, I think if anything, they've grown, which is really wonderful. We are working still with AMAN, of course, Astoria Food Pantry, and other mutual aid groups across Queens. We've also started making some really great partnerships, even in Brooklyn, which is wonderful. Because I think as a city, we need to continue to come together and be collective. Yeah.
So with when you talked about the wealth of Astoria and the wealth of certain communities and whatnot. With the volunteers, I think back when we spoke in June, you had 120 volunteers, and you mentioned a lot of those volunteers are people that actually benefit also from your service, and want to give back. Have you seen that we talked about wealth, right? But this wealth also of just dignity, and this wealth of generosity, not only with money, but with time.
Right. Yeah. Do you guys know that I have a little kid too? It's in my bag. Yes. So I think in terms of volunteers, we definitely have seen a drop in volunteer engagement because people are going back to work, and that was expected. We also ask you. Yeah. So you want to sit with me? Sorry, Daniel, can we edit this out?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, give me 1 second, and I'm gonna help him so that I can answer that.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Just pause.
Sometimes it's easier to just do the thing they need.
No worries. I'm just going to start the timer. So we're at 11:30, but I'm okay. I think we can get in around 15. So this is actually really good, though. So, so I'm just going to, I'll let you know when we start back up. And if you want to just go back to the you mentioned the volunteers have kind of dropped a little bit. Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Okay, and we're back. So Kim, you were mentioning the status of volunteers with Lifeline Groceries.
Yeah, so we've definitely seen a drop in our volunteer numbers over the last few months. People are going back to work, which was expected. Summer is also something that gets in the way sometimes. But I think that I find it my job as a leader and the other team leaders on our group too, of continuously figuring out how we can engage our community, because we want this to be something that comes from within. We want to make sure that we are talking a lot about what we're doing and letting people know our updates and things like this is really great to be able to do that. In terms of where our volunteers are coming from and what those numbers look like, I think our goal has always been to create a sustainable program. And at the end of the day, if your program relies on volunteers, it's limited in its sustainability, which is also why a priority for us has been how can we create jobs with what we're doing, because we know that we can only rely on volunteer work to a certain extent, and we don't want to rely on volunteer work either, right? We want to be able to create something that gives back to the community in multiple ways, and what better way to do that than to be able to create jobs in the middle of a pandemic? Like, that says something, right? And we've been able to do that too. While our volunteer numbers are dropping, we're also working really hard, to the point where we've been able to hire regular van drivers every week, who can rely on that couple of days a week to be able to do this work. And that is a huge priority. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that the fact that you that it's not only just groceries, but it's also, like you said, sustainability, and also being a job creator is
Yeah.
so important, especially during a time like COVID. With that comes cost. So you were
Mhm.
mentioning 700 families a week, and still have a waiting list. What
Yeah.
kind of cost are we looking at on a weekly basis in order for you to keep doing this?
Yeah. So we've been able to secure some really um, substantial food donations on a weekly basis, through other organizations that we've worked with, um, and through local businesses as well. Um, but it's essentially a little over $3,000 a week that in order for us to create a grocery bag that is what we feel is necessary for families, which means that it includes the grains that we want to give them. And it includes the 2-3 pounds of grains. It includes milk and eggs. It includes toilet paper or feminine products. In order for that to be a really great drop and for us to feel proud of what we're giving and not feel like we're having to pull back, a minimum of $3,000 a week is kind of where we're at. And that also includes costs for paying our van drivers, renting the vans, and even buying our volunteers lunch, because that's important to us too. We want to make sure that we're not, this is hard work that people are doing when they volunteer for us, and we know that. Whether you're delivering food or whether you're there packing on a 97-degree day. So those costs are all necessary to us. Yeah. So it's a good amount of money that we need to make sure we're maintaining every week.
So that leads me to the next question of what do you need? How can people help? It
Yeah.
seems like there's been a shift from the volunteers to maybe more of a funding need. And how can people do that? How can people help you with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and this is not unique to Lifeline. This is a situation that a lot of other programs are finding themselves in, mutual aid, grassroots type programs, where the beginning of the pandemic, this is with anything, where when something happens and explodes, there's a rush to support, right? So we had really high fundraising numbers in the beginning. And that naturally trickles out. And that was something that we anticipated too. So now we're at the point where we're kind of going week to week and we're trying to pull things together on a weekly basis, which creates a lot of strain. So fundraising or donations right now are our biggest need and is something that helps tremendously. The great thing about Lifeline is that we order our food wholesale, which means that we get it at a lower per dollar cost. An individual grocery bag for a family of 4 costs $30, and that lasts them for the whole week. And that includes milk and eggs. That includes 2 to 3 pounds of grains and fruits and vegetables. $30 is a pretty minimal amount of number to be able to feed a full family for a week.
Right.
So if people are able to give donations, that support goes a really long way, because of the way that we operate and how we order food. How do you support us and how do you do that? We have a campaign going on our website at theconnectedchef.com/Lifeline Grocery. And you can donate right through there. And you can click on the donate button and you can sponsor a family for a month. So a month is $30 $30 a week. So it's $120 and you sponsor a family for a month. So the more that people are giving regularly and on either a weekly or monthly basis, that's really, really helpful for us, because if you're sponsoring and committing to even just one family, then we know that we're going to definitely be able to rely on that as the weeks go on. Another really awesome idea that some of our volunteers are doing is like a fundraising party within your little community or your family, where you pool together and decide that you're going to raise enough money to get Lifeline through a week. So $3,000 will allow us to feed every family on our list for a single week. So one of our volunteers actually is doing a birthday party, and he is taking all of the proceeds from this birthday party. It's a virtual birthday party, taking all the proceeds from that, and he's creating this goal of $3,000. And then when they raise that money, it's going to get donated to Lifeline. So really creative ways of raising money like that are amazing and make us super happy, not just because we're able to put that into our grocery bags, but because that's also what community is all about, and what it means to kind of take our own strengths and see how we can support one another.
Yeah, Kim, thank you for reminding us that importance of giving it to your community, and that thank you for everything that you're doing, and that you've done. Back when we spoke in June, the theme of our conversation was don't settle, and
Yeah.
you continue to exemplify that we don't have to settle, that
Yeah.
things don't have to stay a status quo.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining me today, and for I just encourage everyone to really consider, if you at least donate to help one family a week. But if you can do like our mutual friend is doing, and create an opportunity where you can help raise enough money to help Lifeline Groceries for 1 week to to provide groceries for 700 families, I think is just incredible.
And I just want to add to some of our community members also have been able to connect with their own employers to check in with their employers to see if there's fundraising that they can do within their jobs as well. And I think that that's really powerful in a pooled sense, because our donations are tax deductible, and you're able to, it's kind of an incentive for companies, and some companies even do a matching program. So if you do something like that within your employer, the employer could potentially match that, and then you can double your money, which is great. So that's just another way to increase the impact.
Well, again, that's just a number of great ideas and a number of great ways for people to get involved, and yeah, people, whatever people can do. And because I think out of our blessings come um come an obligation, if you will,
Yeah.
and also I know that I've been helped in the past, and it just that act of paying that forward. So Kim, you do that
Yeah.
every day. So thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you for connecting with me again.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Okay.